The studio lights of the Today Show burned brightly that morning, casting a golden glow over the polished set. Al Roker, America's favorite weatherman and co-host, stood smiling at the cameras as the audience applauded. But behind that famous smile, tension was brewing. Today's guest was no ordinary celebrity, it was Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, returning to American television for the first time in months. Producers had promised an open and honest interview about Meghan's new humanitarian projects and her plans in Hollywood. But everyone in the control room knew one thing: when Meghan spoke her mind, headlines followed. As Meghan entered the studio, dressed elegantly in a cream-colored suit, she greeted the crew with polite smiles. Yet there was a quiet stiffness in her posture, the kind that comes from years of criticism and scrutiny. She knew what people were expecting: controversy. "Welcome back to the Today Show, Meghan Markle," Al began, his usual warmth and tact. "It's been quite some time since we've had you here. How have you been?" "Thank you, Al," Meghan replied smoothly. "It's good to be here. I've been focusing on my foundation and spending time with my family, trying to live life with purpose, away from unnecessary noise." The first few minutes went perfectly. They discussed charity work, motherhood, and her recent documentary. But then Al, known for being direct when needed, brought up the question everyone was waiting for. "Meghan," he said, glancing briefly at his notes, "there's been a lot of talk about you and Prince Harry distancing yourselves from the royal family. Some say you've built your career around criticizing the monarchy. How do you respond to that?" The air shifted. Meghan's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in defense. "I don't build my career on criticism," she replied calmly. "I build it on truth. When people in power use silence and manipulation, speaking out becomes necessary. I won't apologize for telling my story." The audience murmured softly. Al nodded, but pressed further. "But some would argue that your story affects others' reputations, including your in-laws. Don't you think it's time to move on?" Meghan gave a small, tight smile. "I think moving on doesn't mean pretending things never happened. Growth comes from accountability, something I wish certain institutions understood." A few audience members clapped, others shifted uncomfortably. The control room was buzzing. The producer whispered into Al's earpiece, "Move on to the next segment." But Al ignored it. "So, are you saying the royal family has never taken accountability?" he asked sharply. Meghan's tone hardened. "I'm saying people love to protect images, Al. But behind every image, there's a truth the public never sees." The tension was visible now. Al Roker's signature cheerfulness vanished. "With all due respect, Meghan," he said, his voice rising, "you've had every platform in the world to speak your truth. Some might say you've turned that truth into a brand." Meghan's eyes flashed. "And some might say certain journalists make a career out of tearing others down. Which one are you, Al?" A collective gasp filled the studio. Al's jaw tightened. "Excuse me. You heard me," she said, leaning forward. "You invite me here to talk about humanitarian work, but all you want is drama. Maybe that's why people are tired of morning shows pretending to care about the truth." The control room went silent. The producer shouted through the earpiece, "Cut to commercial." But Al waved it off. "Meghan, this is the Today Show, not a platform for speeches," he snapped. "And this is 2025, she fired back. "People deserve authenticity, not rehearsed smiles." The audience sat frozen. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate. Finally, Al stood up from his chair. "If you can't respect the format, maybe this interview is over," he said coldly. Meghan slowly rose, maintaining eye contact. "If the truth makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should ask yourself why." Without another word, Al motioned to the crew. "We're done here. We'll be right back after the break." The music cue began, and the cameras faded to black. But backstage, chaos erupted. Producers tried to calm both sides. Meghan's team demanded that the footage not be edited unfairly, while Al's assistant insisted the interview was completely inappropriate. A few minutes later, Meghan was escorted toward the exit. Before leaving, she turned to one of the producers and said quietly, "People will twist this, but I'm used to that." When she walked out of the studio doors into the New York sunlight, flashes from paparazzi cameras exploded around her. She smiled faintly and kept walking. Inside, Al sat alone in the empty set, staring at his coffee cup. He wasn't angry anymore, just thoughtful. Maybe, he muttered to himself, "She's not entirely wrong." The incident made instant headlines across every news platform. Social media erupted with divided opinions, hashtag Team Meghan and hashtag Team AL trending side by side. Some accused Meghan of arrogance, others praised her for standing up against media manipulation. But one thing was certain. That morning, the Today Show had witnessed more than an argument. It had become a clash between two worlds, one that demanded polite silence, and another that refused to stay quiet any longer. And neither Al Roker nor Meghan Markle would ever forget it. The next morning, New York City woke up buzzing. Every major media outlet replayed the clip from the Today Show, the moment Meghan Markle stood up to Al Roker on live television. The argument had gone viral overnight. Twitter was on fire. Hashtags like hashtag Meghan vs Al, hashtag Today Show meltdown, and hashtag Truth Hurts trended across the globe. Talk shows debated the confrontation, YouTube commentators broke down every frame, and millions of viewers argued about who was right. NBC headquarters was in chaos. Executives held an emergency meeting in a glass-walled conference room overlooking Manhattan. Some were furious that Al had lost control on air, others quietly admitted the ratings had skyrocketed. "We can't let this damage our brand," said one senior producer. "We either issue a statement or let the internet destroy us." Al Roker sat silently at the end of the table, his expression unreadable. He had been in television for decades, but he'd never seen a reaction like this. His phone was flooded with messages, half supportive, half hateful. Finally, he spoke. "I'll make a statement," he said. "But I won't apologize for asking hard questions." Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Meghan sat in her hotel suite, scrolling through her phone as headlines poured in. Al Roker confronts Meghan Markle in explosive live interview. Duchess walks off the Today Show, again. Meghan Markle's truth or media drama. Her assistant, Lila, looked nervous. "Should we respond? People are saying you attacked him." Meghan sighed. "They said the same thing when I told my story years ago. The truth always makes people uncomfortable." Lila hesitated. "What if this ruins your reputation with American media?" Meghan looked up from her phone. "Then maybe it's time to build my own platform, one where I don't need permission to speak." That night, Meghan released a short video statement on her foundation's social media page. Sitting calmly in front of a simple white background, she said, "Greater than, when women speak their truth, they're called difficult. When they challenge the system, they're called dramatic. But I will never apologize for standing up for authenticity and honesty. What happened yesterday is proof that honest conversations still scare people. But that's exactly why we need to have them." Within an hour, the video hit over 10 million views. Celebrities, activists, and fans reposted it with supportive messages. Even Oprah commented, "Truth always finds a way to be heard." But not everyone was on her side. On morning radio shows, hosts criticized her tone. "She's playing the victim again," one said. "If she can't handle questions, maybe she shouldn't do interviews." By noon, the story had grown into something much bigger, not just a celebrity feud, but a conversation about the media's power and women's right to speak freely. Al Roker, despite being calm in public, couldn't shake off the confrontation. That evening, he appeared on NBC News for a short clarification. "Look," he said sincerely, "I respect Meghan Markle. I've always admired her work. Things got heated, and I could have handled it better. But I believe in asking questions, even the uncomfortable ones." His honesty earned him some respect back. But the internet didn't stop buzzing. Conspiracy theories spread, some claiming NBC had cut parts of the argument. Others said Meghan had been silenced by producers. 3 days later, Meghan made her boldest move yet. She announced a new digital talk series, Unfiltered with Meghan, to be streamed online, a place where, as she described it, no one cuts to commercial when the truth gets uncomfortable. The announcement shocked Hollywood. The first teaser clip showed Meghan walking through a dimly lit studio, her voice narrating. "Greater than, they tried to control the conversation. So I started a new one." Even Al Roker couldn't ignore it. During the next episode of the Today Show, he mentioned it briefly, saying with a small smile, "Looks like Meghan's taking things into her own hands. I wish her luck." But viewers noticed something strange. Al's tone wasn't bitter, it was reflective. Some even said he seemed humbled. Later that night, Off camera, Al sat at home watching a replay of the infamous interview. For the first time, he saw the exhaustion in Meghan's eyes, not arrogance but fatigue. The fatigue of someone who had spent years defending herself. He picked up his phone and typed a message. Greater than, "Hey Meghan, no hard feelings. You were right, real conversations are never comfortable. Maybe one day we can have another one, off camera." He hesitated for a moment, then pressed send. The next morning, Meghan replied simply. Greater than, "Thank you, Al." Maybe that's where the real story begins. The world might have seen two public figures clashing on TV, but behind the headlines, something unexpected had happened. Two people, from completely different worlds, had finally started to understand each other. And as the first episode of Unfiltered with Meghan premiered weeks later, featuring activists, teachers, and survivors telling their raw, unedited truths, one thing became clear. The argument on the Today Show hadn't ended a career. It had started a revolution in how truth was told.